Hello again guys, welcome to yet another video, and today we're going to be crocheting, or at least I'm going to try to film crocheting for you. I don't really know if it's going to be easy to learn from necessarily. I don't really have the camera set up for a proper crochet video, but I'm going to try it anyway because I really want to do it. That's the only reason really. And so I'm going to do a little setup, show you my tools, what I'm going to use, what we're going to be doing, and then we'll see how it goes. These are my crochet hooks. I've got an awful lot of them, tons of different sizes. Some of them are really small. Pretty sure these are for crocheting lace. I haven't tried that yet, but I want to at some point when I get a little bit better at it. Probably going to be using a bigger hook, one of the bigger hooks today. It's going to be easier for you to see, hopefully. This one's a yarn needle, so that's what you would use to sew with wool, because it's thick enough at the top to pop the wool through. Probably not going to use this today, but this is a stitch marker. Just made it out of an old necklace I had hanging around. If you need to count your rows or your rounds or anything, then you can stick this on your starting point to help you count. Probably not going to need that today. That's a slightly more basic one that came with my original crochet kit that I bought. And a pair of scissors. Nothing fancy, just something that's going to cut through your wool. Now the wool I'm going to use today is fairly thick. I don't actually know what size this is. This came to me without the label. I bought it from a charity shop, so it was already half used by the time I got it, but it just looks thick enough to me for you guys to be able to see it clearly enough. Just a plain white as well. Wasn't going for colour, just size really. And what we're going to be making is one of these. So this is going to be a face scrubby. So if you're into your sustainability and your less waste and all the rest of that, you probably use something like this to clean your face in the morning. I've got several of these. They're just sort of made out of flannel-y kind of material. Use them every morning to have a wash around my face and stuff. But I don't quite have enough to keep me going between washes, so I'm going to make some more. Made several in different sizes. Size depends on the wool you're using. That one must have added too many stitches because it's slightly bendy, but depending on the wool you're using and the needles you're using, you're going to get different sizes and different shapes. Now if you're using wool that you have bought from a charity shop and it hasn't got any labels on it or anything, and you don't know what size it is at all, if you don't have a wool sizer, I don't, I've seen them kicking around in charity shops though, they are quite easy to find. I tend to just choose a hook and then see how well it fits in the hook. That's pretty snug there, so I think that would be alright. I might go one size up actually, because I think it might make it easier for you guys to see. Still fits pretty well. Not sure, I might go one up again, you know. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with that. That's the 6mm hook. So to start off a face scrubby, we're going to need to do a magic circle, which is one of the most common ways to start off any crochet in the round. So, with the tail end hanging from your hand here, just wrap the wool around your fingers like that, and then put the hook under this one, over the second one, and pull it through and twist. And then, oh, I haven't done that very well. You need to grab that piece of wool there with the hook and pull it through the loop that you just made. I made that extremely tight. Contrary to my first opinion, I think I'm actually going to change my hook. I think it's too big to fit through the loops I'm making, so I'm just going to go 5mm down, see if that helps. Yeah, there we go. So we've got a first little loop there. So take your fingers out of the circle you've made there. We've got the beginning of a magic circle. So the bit I struggled with most when I first started doing this was how to hold the wool at the edge here. This is what you call your working wool because this is attached to the ball, and that's the tail. We can use this to tighten it up later. So some of the tutorials you'll see will show you to hold it like that. I found that completely useless. I wrap it around my entire hand twice like that. I find that way easier, but it does depend on what you find easy to do. So although I do it like this, you might not be able to at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 6 single crochets into the circle to create the magic circle. So what we do then is we pop our hook under there, over the working wool to put it through there, and then holding your wool tight enough you can then pull through the working wool through both of those loops there. So under, over and pull it through, go up and grab it again and pull it through again. And you just need to do that 6 times. It can be easy to lose count of your stitches while you're doing that, but see these little shapes here. If my camera will focus, that's a little bit better. So you got 1, 2. Each one of these is a stitch. So as soon as you've got 6 of those shapes, you're good to go. And I have, so that's good. I tend to do this bit really messily. I've seen other people do it way neater than me, but mine always start off really messy. So what you would normally do is pull on this tail to tighten the circle. It pulls it together for you. This wool is a bit scratchy, so it is quite hard to pull. And then what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch the circle together at the end. So, ignoring the tail, which I've made very long, so it's getting in the way now. In the first stitch here, you need to put your hook through the 2 loops, grab your working yarn and then pull it through both of these, and that's a slip stitch, and that pulls the circle tight for you. So before we carry on, I'm going to deal with this tail. Make sure you can't see the hole in the middle of the circle there by pulling the tail tight. And then I know most people weave it in with their working wool. I just tie it in a knot and cut it off. I'm not about, you know, hugely neat stuff. I just do what works for me. So do it whichever way you prefer. And then I cut that short. I always keep these scrap pieces of wool. I'm building a small collection of bits of wool like this because eventually I want to try and make a wool rug with them by crocheting loops onto a mat, something like that. I don't know, I don't quite know how it's going to work yet, but I'm keeping hold of them for that, so I would recommend keeping hold of your scraps for other projects. So what we need to do now is increase the size of the circle. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain 3. So to do that you just need to pull the wool through your existing loop once, 3 times, and then that acts as the first double crochet in the first stitch. I say double, you know, I've chained 3. There's 2 different ways of talking about crochet. There's the US version and the UK version. The pattern I'm using is US version, so everything is 1 stage down from UK terms. It's quite complicated to learn when you first start. You just sort of need to figure out which one you're reading before you know what you're doing. So if I get my terms mixed up at any point, do excuse me, because my head sort of works things out very strangely and I'll flip between the 2 quite regularly. So for our treble crochet or double crochet, what you need to do is yarn over, pop your hook through the first stitch. I have made this incredibly tight. This wool is quite difficult to use actually. And then pull your working wool through that again and pull up there. And then you pull it back through 2 of the loops. And then through the second. You can see that was quite tricky. I wasn't expecting this wool to be this hard to work with, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm just sort of trying to use up things that I've got because I've got so much wool it just needs using, really. I'm trying to use it before I allow myself to buy any new ones. These are my 2 wool baskets. See, the trouble with getting into crochet and knitting and trying to use up all your wool is that you get so into it, you just buy more, and that kind of defeats the purpose. Hence why I've got 2 baskets full. To be fair, some of it was donated, which was very kind. But yeah, kind of need to tidy these up a bit. We'll carry on anyway. So we need to do 2 of those in every stitch around. So for every little loop there, we need to do 2 double crochets into each one. So once you've done a stitch once, it opens up a little bit and makes it a lot easier for you to do it the second time. Because not only is it a bit more open, you can see it much more easily as well. Yeah, and you can see it's increasing in size, as it should be. So we're just going to do that around 12 times in total. It can sometimes be easy to lose track of what you're doing. I do it all the time. But you can kind of see how many stitches you've put into each one. So that tiny little hole there is our stitch, and there are 2 double crochets coming out of it, so I know I've already done that one, so I can move on. I also tend to use my nails an awful lot, or my fingers, to help the hooks through particularly tight stitches. Where I do a really messy magic circle, this is a regular problem for me. I'm sure with much more practice I'll start doing it much more cleanly and not have this problem anymore. So once you reach the end, you should have 12 of these stitches around the edge, not including the original 3 from the chain. So you count onwards from there. So what I've actually got is 13, which is fine. So all I'm going to do to rectify that is pull the hook out, gently unravel back to my 12th stitch. I'm actually going to start again with different wool, different hook. I took a glance down at my pattern book and realised that I was doing it wrong. So I write all my patterns down in my little notebook. Got quite a few in here at the moment. And if I'm not following it and not concentrating properly, I tend to do it wrong. So I'm going to read this properly this time and start again and show you what we're supposed to be doing. The beginning is still the same though. That is a dead moth on my mat. Get away. Oh my god. There we go. Second time lucky. But you've seen me do it several times now, so you kind of get the idea of what we're doing. So where I went wrong was right at the beginning here. I did 6 single crochets into this circle. I needed to do 12. I needed double the amount. So I'm going to do that again. You'll notice I keep rewrapping the wool around my hands because of the way I hold it, it doesn't always stay as tight as you need it. This looks like some sort of mad cat's cradle, but this works for me. So, in through the circle, grab that working wool there and put it through, grab it again, put it through both. In through the circle, grab the working wool, pull it through and grab it again through the 2 loops, and 12 times into this circle. There we go. So I've got my 12 stitches. Gonna pull that one tight. So we've got our tiny little circle just there. I think I'm out of focus again. There we go. Just gonna slip stitch that together at the end. So now we're going to carry on as we did before. I've rectified my mistake. So we need to chain 3. So 1, 2, 3. And then we need to do our double crochets. So over the hook, into the stitch, pull that wool through again, and then put it through 2, put it through the 1. There we go. And again, two of those into every stitch after that. So the first one, it's not 2 double crochets, it's the chain and a double crochet. Every other one is 2 double crochets. So again, yarn over into the next stitch, pull the wool through, pull it through the 2, pull it through the 1, and then keep going. There we go, that's much better. So when I slip stitch that together now, it's not going to be crinkly and horrible because I've done it with the right amount of stitches this time. So slip stitch the 2 together, so in through there, pull the wool through both loops. It gives you a nice level circle. We're doing much better this time, guys. This is the worst colour change wool I've ever seen in my life. Look at how exciting that rainbow wool is. You can see why I picked it up and brought it home, but look at how it knits. There's no blend at all. That's not what I wanted. Very disappointing, but I shall carry on anyway. So for the next round, we need to puff stitch into each stitch, which really threw me for a loop first time I did this design. It took me ages to get a puff stitch right, or at least the right amount around the edge to make it sort of flat, and I don't know, it really threw me for a loop. Excuse the pun. So around the edge of this circle we should have 24 of these stitches. You can actually see these better now. So that's what your stitches look like. They're sort of like a chain link almost. So for a puff stitch, it's about the same size as a double crochet here. So we're going to chain 3 again. And then what we need to do is, similar to the double crochet, we need to yarn over an awful lot of times, but we need it so that there are 9 loops on the hook. And you'll see why this confused me so much originally in a moment. So we yarn over through the first stitch, pull 1 through and pull it up so that you've got a decent amount of space in your loops there. Do it again so that you've got another 2 there, and then again, so that you keep adding, and then one more time, so yarn over, in through the same stitch, pull it back through, and then you should have 9 loops on your hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I did it right, yeah! And then what we need to do is pull the working yarn through all of these loops. So hook it in, pull it all the way through so that we tie them all together. And then we need to chain 1 to put a stitch over the top of the puff stitch. And then we just do it again in every single stitch afterwards. So there's 1 puff. It's a little bit like a flower petal. Once it goes all the way around, it will have a nice sort of squish to it. So we've reached a point where we've got nearly a full circle. I've actually stopped 2 stitches short of the full circle because if I think if I'm going to add 2 more puff stitches, it's going to warp even more. I do find with this wool in particular, it's very loose once I've stitched it together, so it ends up sort of bowing and buckling all over the place, which isn't really what we want. We want it to be much flatter. So I'm just going to ignore my last 2 puff stitches and slip stitch the circle together. It's flattened it out ever so slightly by doing that. So you can sort of adjust patterns as you go depending on what wool you're using. If you don't know what you're doing necessarily, you might want to try it out a few times before you start messing around with it a little bit. I tend to do this all the time. I'm a crochet maverick. So we've got 1 more round to go on here. What we need to do is single crochet into every one of the stitches around the edge here. So to do that, you need to start off by chaining 1, and then pop your hook through the stitch, pull the yarn through, and then just pull the loop through both of those there. And then again, so into the next one, pull that through and pull it through again. Really simple. You will notice there's some gaps in between a lot of my puff stitches. Again, I find this happens a lot with this particular wool. Other wools haven't done this to me quite so much, so this was something completely different. Again, I don't really know what this was made of, whether it was acrylic or if it's proper wool, but it's stitched together much neater than this one did. Probably should have used this one to show you what I'm doing, but oh well. I want to use up all the rainbow one, I don't like it. So we're going to carry on through the stitch, pull the wool through and pull it through the two. Through the next stitch, pull the wool through and pull it through again. And then you just keep going all the way around your circle. There we are, so we've reached the end there, so all I'm going to do is slip stitch it together, and then what I'll do is chain one through that loop, cut the wool, pull it through, pull it tight. Now you normally just tie that with an extra knot on the end there as well. This isn't the official way to finish, it's not the neatest way to finish, but admittedly I haven't quite learned the finishing off process properly yet. And these are just going to be for washing my face anyway, so I'm not really worried about them being completely neat. And then cut that off there. My god, look at how bendy it is. I don't know what it is about this wool, you know. But there's an idea of what it should look like. In the end, what I'm actually going to do, because I use my own homemade face wash and it's quite liquid, I'm actually going to stitch a piece of scrap cotton onto the back of these, which will also help to flatten them out, but will also give something for the liquid to soak into for when I wash my face. I haven't done anything like that yet, but I shall share pictures when I have. But yeah, this wasn't the easiest video to watch or do. So what I'd recommend is if you've watched this and you thought, oh actually I really want to give that a go, look up other people's tutorials online, because there are other people that crochet on YouTube with proper setups and they really know what they're doing. And they're much easier to learn from. That's how I learned it, pretty much. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, regardless of all the errors that I've made. This wasn't the easiest thing to film, I must admit. It was quite challenging. I would normally do that so much quicker if I wasn't filming using proper wool and proper tools. If I got it right, believe it or not, it works. But just for an idea of how easy it is to sort of pick it up, once you get going and you know what you're doing, you can sort of do anything really. I started learning to crochet at the beginning of this year. That was the first thing I ever did successfully, was one of these face scrubbies. And then just yesterday I finished this. Little clown sheep. If I can find a picture to pop up on the screen, I'll show you what it's based on. The character from a game I've been playing a lot of recently. But that was a lot of, that took 3 days. And he's adorable. But is a good example of what you can achieve once you get to grips with what you're doing, because this didn't follow a pattern, I made this up. A couple of the bit, like the wool is based on a pattern for a rose, but I just didn't pull it together. I used it as a chain of wool instead. Yeah, I sort of just went with it, you know, learnt a few things from other patterns and then just made it up completely. But he's so cute, look at him. I'm sorry if you hate clowns, because you'll probably find him terrifying, but I think he's adorable. Yeah, get out there and give it a go. Anyway, thanks for watching again, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it despite all the hiccups. See you next week.